Okay, here we go. As part of the required legislation, the State Board of Ed updates the classified salary ranges in our adopted manual. Classified personnel are not certified. They are not required to be certified by the State Board of Education in order to be employed. That does not mean, so classified by that definition, which is in statute, is other positions may have to require certifications or professional licenses, but if they're not certified by the State Board of Education in our licensure department, then those would be considered classified employees. The goals of this recommendation were to meet legislative requirements, provide flexibility for the LEAs to establish a competitive local pay scale, simplify and combine the pay ranges for levels within a position classification, try to expand the pay ranges to allow local boards of ed to establish pay scales that meet your needs for specific employment markets, and align the SBE salary policy to the Office of State Human Resource pay ranges and job descriptions where possible, so that it creates greater efficiency for everybody and comparability. The Office of State Human Resources recently updated their pay ranges July 1st, 2022, to help make the state jobs more competitive in the market. There are a lot of concerns. There are a lot of concerns with the current pay grades. The State Board of Ed pay grades don't reflect the new SHR pay grades that went into effect in July. There is compression that's been built in over time. One of those is the state minimum wage increase to $15 per hour. It covers several of the pay grades, and it created a bit of compression with the old maximums. And the current min-max ranges then create little room for creating a meaningful scale, meaning you don't have enough range and they're too narrow. There's several bits of governing legislation you should be aware of. 115C-12, Section 16. Salary schedules for the following public school support personnel shall be adopted by the State Board of Ed. So that group is school finance officer, office support personnel, teacher assistants, maintenance supervisors and personnel, custodial personnel, transportation personnel, and school food service personnel. And it does say that we shall classify the support positions to be included in the schedule of the State Human Resource Commission. So that is the biggest reason why we've tried to tie this to the Office of State Human Resources scale. Other governing legislation is a local board shall determine salary schedules of employees pursuant to the provisions of all of those. So every local board may adopt. Can you just shut it down? Every local board of education may adopt their own salary schedules. The state board is only providing a minimum maximum, so it is highly recommended that the local board create their salary schedules to recognize differences in salaries and make sure you're competitive and can hire who you need. Other governing legislation is 115.316 related to the OT-PTs. Every local board of ed shall adopt a minimum salary schedule for OT and PTs in accordance with the non-certified salary grades and ranges adopted by the State Board of Ed. We have linked the OT-PT ranges in our recommendation to the mental health group, our medical health group from Office of State Human Resources. We've tried to make it a wide range to allow sufficient flexibility for those positions and for the local boards to create as competitive a scale as they may be able to afford. Other legislation is driver's ed. The State Board of Education shall adopt a salary range for driver ed instructors who are public school employees and certification for school nurses. So again, the state board shall establish a salary range for a non-certified school nurse. So now we'll discuss our proposed pay ranges. The basic parameters, again, align with OSHR's pay grades. Where no classification existed, we tried to align with the comparable level position with the current pay grade we currently have in the manual. All the SBE pay grades reflect the $15 state minimum hour, the wage for full-time personnel. And we did do an extensive review of sample of current LEA schedules, small to large LEAs on what currently is out there to make sure that we were at least in alignment with some of that. This policy does not provide additional funding for any increases to the maximum of the pay range. LEAs are responsible to develop the salary schedules for their employees that differentiate by education and experience. And this policy does not reflect all the multitude of classified positions of employees in the LEAs. Again, we centered on the ones that are statutorily required, but also provided enough flexibility. We obviously cannot possibly come up with all the different unique positions and establish a pay range for all the uniqueness you guys have out in your LEAs. The finance officer position is specified in the statute. We'll be bringing that specific position back since we are also updating the policy related to the certification of a school finance officer. Right now, the current ranges of the school finance officer are included in school administrator section. Again, we'll be updating that policy, and at that time, we'll include a recommendation for the salary range for a finance officer. Until then, you should continue to use the school administrator section. Technology positions, the state board is not required to provide a scale related to technology positions under the general statutes. And due to the rapid evolution and market influences with those positions, it's recommended that PSUs refer to the OSHR classifications to assist in developing those salary schedules that may apply for their PSU. And the biggest reason of that is that a network, if you think of it as a network engineer or a LAN engineer for a state level position with those responsibilities, or a large LEA versus a small LEA, there is a lot of differentiation in what that job description really is. And since the state board does not have to provide those under statute, we think it's best that the LEAs do what's best to meet for their staff. The scale meets the minimum state wage. It provides a minimum and maximum for using state and or federal funds that are in grant funds through Fund 3. Local funds may supplement the pay ranges, and LEAs may approve local schedules differentiating years of experience in education. All of this aligns with the NC Office of State Human Resource salary ranges, and we hope it provides a wider range and creates more flexibility for everybody. The timing of this, we are recommending that the $15, well, we're not recommending that since statute, the $15 per hour minimum wage was effective July 1st, 2022. We are recommending that the SBA approve the new minimums other than the $15 per hour for the ranges to go into effect July 1st of 2024. That would allow time for the LEAs to update their local salary schedules as may be needed to implement the new minimums. We are also recommending that the allowable maximums go into effect using state and or federal funds as soon as this policy is approved by the SB and retro to July 1st of 2022. So you can take advantage of the maximums right away, and we're giving you time before you have to implement the minimums. And in the PowerPoint that is with the State Board materials, we have the link for the Office of State Human Resource information. This is what that website looks like, where you can get to the class and comp area. You can look at all of there's DT salary schedule. Those would be your technology positions. Most of the positions in the scale are the HNC positions. And you can look up classifications and search on different types of positions. So if it begins with a B, you can look those up and try to get what you think that should be. And now I've lost my place. I will show you. So escape out of that. So in the actual salary manual, beginning on page 18, yes. I think you need to share that. Oh. Okay. I don't know why it's doing. Stop sharing. No, it's fine. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully we're back and you can see my screen. This is from the salary manual. So beginning on page 18 of the salary manual, you'll see where we have struck out the old pay grades, which are several Office of State Human Resources reiterations old. So basically we struck all of that out. You can see there were quite a few in there, and these would be the new scales. So we've included the NC scale. We have modified the current NC scale to reflect the $15 per hour minimum wage. These are all based on a 40-hour work week. I do want to note that everybody is based on a 40-hour work week except for TAs. That TA 37.5-hour week remains consistent. It's whatever you guys want for TAs. So however you need to do it to make the money work. Again, the state board is providing you with minimum and maximums. We also included the medical health pay table in the manual just because we have several positions that qualify under that. And we wanted to make sure for your EC staff, if you need to cross-reference on other staff and you had that scale readily in our manual. Again, the salary grade placements, you can see that this reflects what we just covered in our PowerPoint. We've simplified it, so we have wider ranges with fewer types of positions. We're going to leave it up to the LEAs know best if they have a level 1, 2, 3, 5 type of position, depending on their size district and how they want to set up their scale. So we have office administration. We've cut that down to office support in the ranges from NC 1 to 5, and student information data managers. Transportation, you'll see that we've expanded that. The bus driver, NCO4, is the equivalent of a vehicle operator 1 at the state. And again, we've tried to match this to state positions. We also tried to make the bus driver range school nutrition range for school nutrition workers and TA range, very consistent with each other to allow a little bit more flexibility since you have a lot of combination positions with those positions. We also took our classified director positions such as transportation, maintenance, and school nutrition director and made them a similar range since they all have a similar scope of duties. We've separated out curriculum support from other licensed professionals. So these other licensed professionals are the ones that are dictated in statute that require a license but are not licensed or certified by DPI. As such, by definition in general statutes, they fall under the classified salary scale. You'll see that those ranges, we tried to make them cover several layers of steps as we could. And then the last page is your maintenance operations. Again, we tried to provide a little bit bigger ranges for everybody. And there are a multitude of different types of positions within this cohort, but we picked the ones that are most prevalent in what we see in the data and out that had a clear match with the state. And that's about where we're at. And so we've gotten a few questions, but not a lot. Most of the questions have come from the OTPT cohort. So I would ask that the local districts, your HR and finance officers out there, make sure that your local folks know in that classification of why they fall on the classified scale and where they place on there. We do think that the ranges provided provide you with a competitive base for setting those scales. But other than that, I did not have any other questions from the districts coming in. So at this time, I will try to, I'm not sharing anymore, right, Nicola? No. Okay. I will give me a minute and I'll expand the Q&A and we'll try to take your questions. Okay, not too many questions on this, so thanks for being patient through that presentation. There is no additional money for this unless the General Assembly chooses to authorize additional funding. That is a big reason why we're allowing the LEAs till July 1st, 2024 to implement any of the minimums being recommended in this scale. Since most of this impacts your local pay scales, we know that you do have to work on this to structure a new local pay scale, and you may have to have this as part of your budget request for your county commissioners and such. So we thought it best to provide you at least until July 1st, 2024 to implement any of those minimums. There is no additional funding related to this. Again, it's a local pay scale. I am working with NCASBO to try to get a cohort of folks to help assist. We have a lot of new finance officers and HR directors, and so we're going to try to have some regional meetings to offer some support for those that have to redo their salaries, local pay scales, and to provide some guidance on how you may structure that. It varies between all the LEAs. From some try to do a step every year, some can only afford to do a step every few years. Again, those local pay steps are funded with local funds, not necessarily with state funds. The state ranges provide an increase to the minimum and maximums of those ranges. So that's where we're at with that.
Good morning, this is Alexis. I was sitting in today because this particular item, it's kind of long overdue, getting that alignment, making sure the State Board of Education is in compliance with the law. But also, as we know, there has been kind of not a huge enthusiasm to fund classified positions in those allotment categories. So the timing of this was not kind of by coincidence. The timing was to get this to the board at the same time that we have budget requests. The state board does not generally put in their budget requests for salary increases, but it does go at the same time. And so it is hoped that this will provide awareness for the need of funding those classified positions, especially in the time that we are in our market for labor force. And so I've spoken independently with the local superintendents that this was our plan, because this was one of their concerns also, was just being able to have enough funds or having the ability to recruit bus drivers, or some of our OTPTs is another one that comes up, and some of those positions. So hopefully there will be during this session some awareness for the need for kind of labor market money.
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. It is important for you guys to address your concerns to your different special interest groups that can assist with that. I have several that asked for the presentation. I actually will be updating the presentation based on some of the questions and comments for the December State Board meeting. So I should have that ready, and we'll post an updated presentation for everybody by the end of the week. But the current presentation is in the State Board materials, embedded in that PDF document if you need it. And I do believe we attached it to the newsletter a week or so ago. But I'll double check. I mean, I think it's out there for you to get. Okay. And Nicola has added a link in the chat for everybody. Okay, so now we'll just go into our updates for this week. We have a few from the allotment group. The restart module will be available for everybody at the end of the week, along with the ABC transfer window opening the end of this week. We will also have the first month adjustments completed by the end of the week. PRC 15 school technology went out last week. Anything that has been approved by the federal program area by the 10th will be going out this week. And the Safer School grants, all 3 phases, are planned to go out at the end of this week. I know with first month adjustments, everybody is getting anxious for best one of 2. Our last LEA is due to report on 11/29, so we expect to have the best one of 2 hopefully by the end of that first week after we get back from Thanksgiving, and then those adjustments will be done in the middle of December. I also had a question come in from an LEA about the teacher bonuses and when that information will be posted in the secure shell. I will have to check on where that may be in the queue, and I'll get something out on the timing of that in the newsletter for everybody. John, do you want to update them on the reversion 312 object code?
Sure. Do you want to move the speaker? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Last week, school allotments processed the updated immediate reversions for the grant programs that had period performances that expired on September 30th. We did receive a lot of questions after those reversions were processed. We're currently working on an FAQ document to answer many of those questions and to provide more information on the requirements and the process around calculating reversions. We are also going to be providing or starting a streamlined process for districts to provide further information on expenditures that were encumbered and obligated before the September 30th deadline, but which might not have been factored into the reversion calculations. We had several object codes that we had to take out of the reversion calculation process because the object codes included types of expenditures that were both allowable and unallowable per the U.S. Department of Ed regulations on when obligations occur. And so we're having to set up a separate process for folks to be able to provide information for those object codes, an example of which would be object code 312, where we had to take it out of we couldn't factor it into the reversions, but where you might have had an allowable encumbrance. So we'll be providing that information this week on the process for submitting the request for reallotment of those funds. If you do have any questions about any of the materials that we put out or about the reversion requirements or process or anything like that, feel free to email or call me. The allotment section, they are swamped at the moment, so feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can help address any concerns that you might have. But we'll put that out through. We'll put it on the web. We'll put those materials on the website, and we'll send an email notification as to their availability. We're trying to get that out before the newsletter goes out later this week, so we'll send a separate communication before then, so that you all know when they're available and can access them on the website.
Thanks, John. The other update I want to provide everybody is that it came to our attention that federal programs sent out a pretty lengthy type workbook for everybody to complete for your LEA maintenance of equity calculation. It's very important that match our actual per pupil we've calculated and report on your school report card. And so right now, Gwen's team is pulling the expenditure tab data for you so that we can provide that information for you and make sure that you're using this exact same data that's used to calculate that per pupil that we report on the report card and report up through other areas in the department to the federal government. We want those to match perfectly. And at the same time, there is the bit of data on that workbook that you will need to gather and complete is the FTE, because the federal definition for the FTE is meant to include any FTE through contracted services. And we do not have that data here at DPI. So Gwen's team's pulling the data right now. We're hoping to get you something, I'm hopeful tomorrow, but we have to get the data. We're working to try to expedite that for everybody because we understand you have a deadline of November 27th on this. But what I can tell you is that we're trying to pull all the expenditure data for you to calculate that per pupil for that federal local maintenance of equity report you have to do. But the data you do need to collect for yourselves is the FTE data. Again, once we get our data gathered and we know exactly how we're going to send it out to you, we'll do that as a blast email out to everybody, so that you can do that, and it will match what is being reported in other areas as your per pupil. So we hope that helps. I apologize for not being on the front end of that, but it was just brought to our attention the end of last week. And so we are trying to help get you what we can. Again, you guys just need to concentrate on getting your FTE data. I am just gonna leave it open for another couple minutes for Q&A. Oh, hey, you guys are really getting a little delinquent. I know everybody's busy, but it's been brought to our attention that nobody has submitted the SS 200 report, which is typically due the very end of October. So we know we have a lot of new people. And if you have questions on that, you can contact Amanda Cruz in Gwen's section. But please get that submitted this week. It's already 2.5 weeks late, and we really need to compile that data and get that moving where it needs to go. So thanks so much for that, and get that in. Thanks. We have some questions related to the April exemption on the maintenance of equity. Do you need to compile? Let's just say that my staff is compiling the data for all LEAs. If you have a question as to whether or not your LEA has to submit this report to federal programs, then you need to get directly with federal programs, as this is under their office. We are trying to get you guys the data so that if you do have to report, that it will match and you will not have an audit exception or follow-up questions as to why your data does not match what has already been reported on your behalf. So if you have questions on if you have to complete that survey and such, you need to get with federal programs. Hey, everybody, seeing no more questions, we'll sign off for today. If you do have questions that come to your mind afterwards, please let me know, and we'll be happy to try to incorporate that in the newsletter or in our FAQs that we're preparing on different subjects. And we'll talk to you guys very soon. Again, if you do have any feedback, finishing up my board materials today and tomorrow. So if you have any other feedback on that classified salary scale, please provide that to me, so that we can make sure the board is informed with, what you guys are thinking. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a wonderful week. Have a very safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday. Please stay safe, please stay healthy, and we'll talk to everybody very soon.